Hallo iedereen, mijn naam is Johnny Verkuringen, CEO van de Europese Goudstandaard. Een Belgische dealer in fysiek goud en zilver, baren en munten. Vandaag hebben we opnieuw een hele speciale gast bij ons, David Morgan. David Morgan is een algemeen erkende analist in de edelmetaalindustrie. Hij adviseert grote hedgefondsen en grote investeerders, vermogensbeheerders, mijnbouwbedrijven en edelmetaalhandelaren over de ganse wereld. De mensen uit onze sector schrijven hem toe bij de beste 3 edelmetaalanalisten wereldwijd. David Morgan is een veelgevraagde spreker en wordt regelmatig uitgenodigd op internationale investeringsconferenties. Daarin brengt hij meer inzicht over het creëren van vermogen en geeft hij zijn visie over hoe en wat een gezond monetair systeem zou moeten inhouden. Met zijn Morgan Report verscheen hij in verschillende media, zoals Bloomberg TV, CNBC en Fox Business. Maar ook kranten en magazines als de Wall Street Journal, The Future Magazine of The Gold Report trekken aan Morgans mouw voor een interview. Ook op YouTube is hij prominent aanwezig. Zijn YouTube-kanaal, The Morgan Report, telt meer dan 30.000 volgers, een echte aanrader. Ikzelf ben bijzonder verheugd dat we deze analist met wereldfaam vandaag te gast hebben. Het interview zal in het Engels doorgaan, maar wees gerust, het is volledig ondertiteld. Zo hoeft u geen interessante informatie te missen. Ik hoop dat u mijn Engels vergeeft en dan verwelkom ik hierbij onze gast. Welcome, Mr. David Morgan. First of all, thank you very much for joining our show today.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here and sorry for the technical difficulties.
Okay. Maybe can you tell us more about yourself? What is your day-to-day job and what are your experiences in the precious metal sector?
Well, I've been interested in the precious metal sector from a very early age, and I've followed it almost daily for several decades. I made a full-time career out of it more than 2 decades ago, written 3 books. One was Get the Skinny on Silver Investing, which was a primer, a basic intro to silver investing. Wrote the Silver Manifesto with my colleague Chris Marchese, which was sort of a Bible on silver, going through monetary history, bullion banking, fractional reserve banking, fractional reserve silvers, silver manipulation, how to choose a mining company. So it's really sort of an academic read. And the last book is called Second Chance, which deals with keeping profits in any market, and particularly in the upcoming, we think, 3rd wave, largest move up in the precious metals.
Okay, thank you again, David. So you have been in the world of precious metals for a long time now. Have you ever experienced a situation in the past that was kind of similar to the present moment, or what are the differences between now and then?
Excellent question. The best I can say is yes, and I'm a thinking person like most of us, and especially watching your interview, but I have to say it's a feeling. This is the same type of feeling I had when I was in the silver market, much younger, in the 1979 time frame. I'd been in earlier than that, but the feeling was that there's something wrong in the silver market. Silver at that time was starting to move up, and a lot of people were sort of bewildered by how it was reacting. In fact, I was getting my finance degree at the time. And I remember not only did the professor call me a silver expert, but she also noted in class that something was wrong in the silver market. And I don't know if it's wrong, but it was that, this big movement, silver's really starting to move. So the answer to the question is yes. I have a similar feeling this time that something isn't right. Now, I know the price movement has been non-existent, really. I mean, there's all kinds of pressures for buying physical metal. There seems to be delays in getting fabricated products into the retail investors' hands. Even the wholesale side of commercial bars are seeing deliveries come off the COMEX, which is not all that, that's fairly unusual. The price remains pretty constant. But the feeling I have, and I, again, don't want to make too much of a deal of it, is something that's not right in the silver market right now. And you can take the answer for however you want. I don't like to base my trading or my investing life on how I feel about something. But nonetheless, you ask the question and that's the answer.
Okay. So yes, you have a lot of contacts also with wholesalers all over the world, I think. Does the rising demand for physical silver right now have any effect on the availability of physical silver at this moment?
That's really tough to answer. Let me answer it this way. Yeah. No, not yet, but there are indicators that it could take place in the near future. That's the best I can do for you. Okay. So I'll repeat it right now. The answer is no. But the trend is so strong presently that we could see congestion in the wholesale market in the near future. And I could verify that with, what's been written by the, the SLV prospectus change, the SIVR prospectus change, what's been talked about on national television in the United States about, we're seeing this continual demand, and if it continues, we may have a silver shortage, and those may not be the exact words, but that's the inference.
Okay. Now, we also understand that the demand of physical silver comes from various sources, from investors and from the industry. Do you have a view of which requests come from which source, and how do you see that evolving in the future?
Well, the industrial demand is fairly constant. Obviously, with the illness, the demand for industry subsided somewhat, but so did the supply. So on balance, they pretty much equaled each other. I mean, it depends on what the two silver studies say. I will argue with them, but it hasn't been that big a deal because, as I said, demand came off, but so did supply. But the huge difference for 2020 was the amount of investment demand. And the amount of investment demand on the retail side was roughly 200 million ounces, which is well above average, which is usually around the 100 million. It varies year to year. But the real demand that no one's really talking about, other than a few private analysts, is the ETF or ETP demand, the exchange traded products. Last year, the demand for the ETPs was about 350 million ounces of silver, added to 200 million ounces of retail coins and bars, for 550 million ounces of silver for investment demand. Yeah. Now, if we go back just 2 decades, the total mining supply in a year was about 550 million ounces. So just to put it in the context, we had an incredible amount of investment demand in silver last year, particularly from the institutional side. Now, some of the SLV and PSLV and SIVR and the ETFs are retail investors. I well know that. But when you start moving around the quantities of silver that I'm talking about, that's institutional money. That's not retail money. Okay.
Now, we hear a lot of stories about the COMEX and the LBMA exchange here also in Europe. I understand that the COMEX would deliver a maximum of 7.5 million ounces of silver. What will happen if more silver is requested? Do you see that happening?
Yes, that is the limit. It's published, so I don't have to state it other than it's a fact. However, there have been several delivery months where the amount that was delivered from the COMEX was greater than that amount. So, they've broken their own rules from time to time, if you want to think of it in those terms. Yeah. I think it's gives the exchange the ability to stop a flow out of the COMEX if they deem it to be necessary. So it is a fact, it is a number. They don't adhere to it all the time, but we've seen about 35 million ounces of silver come off the COMEX over the last, I'm going to say, 3 months. Mm-hmm. And so that would indicate like over 10 million ounces on a monthly basis, which obviously exceeds their own rule. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't really know what to add on to that other than the rule is there for a reason. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that if they need to, they can enact it. But so far, they've kind of ignored it.
No. Okay. Now, we see also worldwide an increase in the demand and the sales of silver. It's, I think, even the highest it has ever been. Most providers have limited or even no offers in their web shop. Can you tell us why is that the little effect on the silver spot price at this time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what you'll hear from the, let's say, the establishment side, and I tend to agree with it, is it's a fabrication issue. In other words, it takes time to take a 1,000-ounce bar, melt it down, extrude it, pull it through the machine, cut it, stamp it, roll it, and then, make it into a medallion or a coin, or the same process to turn it into a bar. Mm-hmm. So the demand exceeds the supply, and therefore the premium for retail products is at unheard of levels, and it's remained there far longer than it did in 2008 mm-hmm. when we had a very similar issue. Mm-hmm. There was a huge demand for retail product, a very limited supply. So as in any free market, the bidder that was willing to bid the highest got the product. And at that time, it was like 30% premium. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that again, except as I just said, and I think it's worth repeating, it continues and continues and continues with, I hate to say no end in sight, but for the right now as we're doing the interview, it doesn't look like there's an end in sight.
Okay, this is, I go already to my last question. Realistically speaking, how do you see the silver price evolve for the coming year and maybe also for the next 5 to 10 years? And can you put numbers on it?
Yeah, there's a few things just to note. Number one is that all markets go up and down. Mm-hmm. Number two is that most markets go in sort of a wave pattern, which means there's a big wave up when it's initiated, and then there's a correction, then there's another wave up, and there's a correction, and then there's a final leg up. The final leg up is usually the most advantageous in capital gains or appreciation. Mm-hmm. It's also not that long in duration in most cases. So in other words, you hit that parabolic point or that, keep that rise above, it keeps going up and up and up and up. And there's a small correction and people buy the dip and it goes up and up and up and up. There's a correction and people buy the dip and then it goes up and up. So that's what I see in our future for silver. Mm-hmm. Price wise, it's very difficult because the way that the market is constructed is based on a derivative, not on a physical metal. And you can create as much derivative product as you want or need. And because of that, you have basically an infinite supply of paper silver. And as long as that satisfies the market, you really don't have an issue. As I said earlier, I have this strong feeling that we're having an issue, even though we don't see it manifested in the price yet. Mm-hmm. So as long as the physical demand continues to be robust and there's more and more demand, or let's say steady demand from what we had in 2020 into 2021, I see a minimum of a $40 US dollar price for silver this year and beyond that. I do think we will get into new territory. I think we will get to triple-digit silver. I think that as perhaps radical as it sounds, there could be an adjustment to the way the exchange operates in the silver market. Mm-hmm. Again, that's radical. They may impose a position limit where you cannot exceed a certain amount of silver without proving you've got the physical metal to back it up, which to me is a fair market. I mean, if I could create something out of thin air that represents a physical product and therefore control the price, in my mind, that isn't really a fair way to determine what the actual price should be. But, you know, I'm biased. I think that almost all these markets are based on fantasy rather than fact. There's been a huge increase in the paper supply of all financial products. Everything has been financialized and refinancialized, and then there's options on options, and on it goes. And with all this stuff, we have a huge mess on our hands. Silver just happens to be a very small market where most people that pay attention to it understand the problems we face financially on a global basis. Mm-hmm. Whereas other market participants, for example, in the bond market, they're very smart people, but stock market, really ignore the fundamental facts of where we're headed on a monetary basis, where we're going to print ourselves into oblivion. And unless there's something that's massively corrected, the mother nature of finance will take over, which means that we will have a currency crisis beyond anything we've ever seen before. And I think before that takes place, there will be a reset. There will be a new monetary system. There will be some restructuring of the debt. Some will probably be written off and forgiven. Some will be extended in time. Some will move into perpetual bonds, meaning a 30-year bond will become a forever bond. There is no redemption year, but you will earn interest on it as long as you own the bond. I mean, there's a lot of factors. And I've thought about this deeply. I'm not just shooting it from the hip. Mm-hmm. I'm just suggesting some possibilities. Whether any of them take place or not remains to be determined. But the banks know they're in trouble. And they put on a smiley face and they'll tell the public that, you know, we're studying the central bank digital currency. We're looking at, you know, this reset. We're doing these stress tests on the banks. And on it goes. But I think if you could be a fly on the wall and see what's really going on when they close the door after the camera shoot, they're probably shaking in their boots thinking,
I think so.
How do we take care of this problem?
I think so. Okay, Mr. Morgan, thank you so much for joining our show. You have given us very valuable information. I appreciate it a lot. We will put your YouTube channel in our description so that our viewers can also subscribe to your channel and the Morgan Report. Thank you again, and we hope to see you soon in the future.
Very good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Volg ons YouTube-kanaal voor aankomende interviews met meer experten van over heel de wereld. Word ook lid van onze besloten Facebookgroep Silver Squeeze, goud en zilver, waarom, wanneer, hoe en waar. Zo blijft u op de hoogte van alle nieuwe updates over de markt. Wilt u meer info of advies over het aankopen van fysiek goud of zilver? Ga dan naar onze website www.europeesegoudstandaard.be. Bedankt voor het kijken en tot een volgende video.